So hi Laura, thanks so much for your time today. And thanks for filling in the Lumina Spark questionnaire a few days ago. I've brought along a full portrait for you. Did you get the short version emailed through to you with the QR code in it?
Yes,
Yeah?
I got a PDF, kind of few pages, and the QR code, I think I had to download the app, and so I've scanned that in and had a look, but I'll be honest, I haven't had a lot of time. So I
no worries, we're going to go through it now. And we've got the team session in a week's time. So the purpose of today is simply to walk you through what we have here to stimulate your thinking so you can have a read of it ahead of the session. And when you come to the session, I'm sure you'll have more questions and things to explore.
Okay.
Great. So you can see here on the front cover, there's a colour swish going from red into blue. That's signifying something about who you are, and I'm going to decode it for you.
So that's personalised.
That's personalised to you, indeed. You're going to find out what there's a number of these colours mean in the session. So if I flick through here, that was the nice letter from me suggesting you get the QR code and download it onto the iPad. So well done for doing that. There's a nice page here describing that the work of Viktor Frankl. He was a psychologist from the last century who said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom, from Viktor Frankl. What that's really saying is, in here, there's some material to help raise your self-awareness. So that when you are at work and things are happening, instead of always responding in the moment really quickly, you can sometimes put a pause in, particularly over things that might stress you out. So you can be a bit more conscious about how you react to the stresses of the team. Yeah. How does that sound?
That sounds great, yeah. I think there's things I'm aware of, so it'll be interesting to see what comes out.
Well, you'll see when we go through the portrait, it highlights some of the things that you do when under pressure, and those certainly are one of the things to explore.
Okay.
So if we walk through it now, the first data here, based on your responses, shows you're reliable, you're practical. The bigger the word, the more you have of it. The smaller the word, you tend to do it less. So I'm wondering how it fits. You reliable, it says here that you're regarded as someone that takes their responsibilities pretty seriously, that you like to be on time and so on. Is that, how does that fit?
I think that resonates quite strongly with me. I do, if I make a commitment, I will stick to it. Possibly sometimes too much as well. And it's interesting that practicals come out so high and also strong, because
so this means sensible, this means sort of pragmatic, this means you want to keep it simple and you just want it to work.
Yeah, that's definitely true in the work that I do.
Now some of the things that are lower, I can see conceptually, it's almost faded at the bottom.
Tiny.
Yeah, that's sort of, do you enjoy a theory, do you like a model?
Only if it's practical.
Only if it's practical, okay, I get that, I get the message.
Not really, I find it hard when people have, I like to see things and I like them to be kind of laid out of how it works.
Well, there's a bit of text to describe this word cloud here that you can have a read ahead of next week. There's something here on your communication style. So it's suggesting that you like to analyse things pretty logically before you bring your point of view forward.
Yeah, I think that's probably very true. I like to look at the information, have thought it through, have a kind of weighting behind it. Yeah, and I think that's...
And in terms of your leadership style, it's suggesting here that you have a down-to-earth style. So you want to be sort of a reality-based leader, it's saying here. People can trust you to speak honestly. It suggests, I don't know if this is true, that you're not into management speak and jargon. You like to sort of keep it straightforward.
Yeah, and I probably, when working with others or leading others, I try and treat everyone as an individual, but everyone with the same amount of respect, just regardless, I think. That's really important.
So what you're coming into there is your empathy and your people focus. We'll come to that in a minute. That's another thing that's drawn out. There's an interesting page on your strengths and possible weaknesses here. So again, it's making reference to how you like to think things through. It does suggest that when you make decisions, at times you can be good at parking your emotions in the decision-making process to be clear.
I think I've had to learn to do that more.
So that's
that's
more of an
probably
adaptive behaviour.
more at work than at home. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, we'll look at the homework divide. In fact, we're going to look at who you are underneath versus how you behave when you're rising to the needs of others. We call that the underlying into the everyday. That's coming soon.
Okay.
If we keep it nice and simple at a very high level, what the portrait's picked up on is that the red is your highest, and if I jump back and we have a look here, you can see you have a lot of logic and reason in you. You're purposeful. You like to compete. You like to win.
Yes. I do. Let's not be around the bush about it. Yes, I do like to win, and I always like to kind of set myself ambitious goals.
And I can see you compete and you collaborate. That's picking up on the red and
yes. When you asked me that question, I was a bit like, oh, I do like to compete, but I don't like to, stand on other people to get there, as it were. It's more for myself, but also driving other people.
So you can see that overall the red has got the highest weighting. The collaboration comes in your green, but this is the sort of the order. Yeah. If we jump to the 8 here, we can see that the biggest thing is your discipline. Focus, be organised, tick it off on time. And that underpins both your red and your blue. Yeah. Your people focus is not far behind. That's your collaborative spirit. And there's your down to earth with all that sensible, pragmatic side.
That's a great way to sum it up, really. And just think big pictures.
And your big picture thinking, alas, is rather small. So you're not the person, you're not the source of the good ideas, but your discipline will want to take them and make them happen. Yeah.
And that's why I like working with people. Yeah, they bring that alive.
Well, let's have a look at your splash here now. Oh, yeah, this is a summary, and we have it on the app as well. Maybe you want to pull it up on the app. We'll have a quick look on the app, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Is this
is it here? So we have it here. So you can see it's laid it out in terms of the 8 with some opposites. So the first thing that strikes me is you've got people focused and outcome focused. I think this is your collaborative spirit, and this is your I want to win. But there's also other things in here, like your empathy in the people focus, your concern for others. At the same time, you want to be reasoned and think it through.
Yeah.
Not only they're seen as dichotomies, but they're not in you. Somehow you're doing both.
Yeah, there are situations, I think, where I find I'm thinking about the people, but I'm also thinking about what I've got to do. And sometimes that can be a struggle. And I may kind of flip between them. Might be a bit of a... but I think it's beneficial having both, because the work that I do, I work a lot with people, but I have outcomes to meet, and therefore I have to balance the weight of both. And sometimes it gets the better of me, but it's...
Now, interestingly, your people focus is not so much supported by your inspiration-driven side. That's the seize the moment, sort of go with the flow. That seems to be lower. Your discipline tends to win out. Hold the structure, hold the order. And you can get a feel here for a sort of reddy purple. The reason it was red and blue on the front cover is that your extroversion, your energy, your enthusiasm combines with this logic and competitive spirit, which combines with your desire to get stuff done and be focused to create a higher amount of red in your splash. But the blue's pretty high too, largely because of your sensible down to earth side.
There's more like white space up there, and I can think of some colleagues I work with who would probably be up there.
And that's partly what we're doing here on the team session next week. We'll look at how you value diversity and value different people. Okay. If you can work with opposites, with people who are quite different to you, it'll tend to make the team stronger.
I know there's times though where if somebody's highly inspiration driven.
Yeah. That's a challenge for you, is it?
Something a little bit.
And what is it that might grate? What might they do?
They're just, don't get me wrong, I really value it. They're quite spontaneous, and they just go off, and I find it hard to
I'm going to click on your inspiration. It says Laura has occasional trouble trusting and following gut instincts. So if people are using their instincts and just wanting to do stuff without analysis, I'm guessing that's going to be less appealing to you.
Yeah, I probably almost take on more of that concern for it. But it does also pull it out of me as well, in terms of if I do need to go and do something spontaneous, particularly outside of work. My partner is much more spontaneous than I am, and that sort of helps me to go there.
Okay, and they do say sometimes opposites attract. Okay, so we're going to keep going through, and we'll come back to the Splash app in a moment. This here, what you have here, is the same data as in the Splash, but in a more linear, traditional format with the bars. Okay. The bars are displayed back to back, so you can see your outcome focus is measured here, but on the same line, we've also got your people focus measures. You're getting 2 scores at the same time. So rather than saying, well, you're just sort of in the middle on these and averaging them out, we can see you're very strongly people focused, but you're pretty outcome focused as well.
And what are these?
So the percentages are normed. That means we've taken a representative sample of people at work, and if we had 100 people randomly taken in a big long row, that would be your rank in that list of 100 people. So what's your people focus score here?
I'd be 86.
You'd be 86 in a line of 100. So there would be 14 people maybe ahead of you, but way more the other way. So it just gives you a feel for where you sit in the distribution. Yeah. Okay, if we have a look now, we're going to drill into the lower level, which is the 24 qualities. So this is what underpins those 8 aspects. So for example, if we look at the outcome focused, we picked up on that you're very competitive, we picked up on you're pretty logical, although the bit that you don't do so much is the tough, the blunt bit. You always you like to challenge and win, but from a reasoned perspective. And we can see you've got the opposites going on here as well. So you'll accommodate, you'll collaborate, and you'll show empathy, and that's what underpins your people focus. And the reason your people focus just hedges it over your outcome focus, that these 3 collectively are somewhat higher than the red ones, mainly because your tough is just slightly lower. Mm-hmm. We can see some interesting patterns. So empathy and logic. This is suggesting that with your logic, you like to be reasoned, tell the truth, be clear. You'll argue your case, and when you're doing that, you want to be, take a stand. However, you also want to be empathetic. You're concerned for others. You want to stay connected to others. And what's it like grappling those 2 opposite things?
I think it's probably quite interesting with the tough there, because there is, logical. I like to have reasoning behind. But an empathy, I do, when I put ideas forward or suggest things, I do think about the other people that are involved very much so, probably sometimes too much so, and actually there's times where maybe I should be more tough. Logical.
We're going to explore your tough a little bit more, because there's actually more to it than just one score. Because so far we've just looked at sort of your scores overall, but if you remember in the questionnaire, some of the questions were asking what you were like underneath, your preferences. Some of them asked you how you tended to behave. We call that the everyday, and some of them are looking at what you do under pressure when you might overdo it. So we call that the underlying, the everyday, the overextended. And we're going to drill into that in a moment and have a look at all 3. So this page here has got a brief definition of those things, and you've got 3 dots. So it's suggesting that underneath, your top thing is being sensible, down to earth and disciplined. That's what you enjoy. When you move to your everyday, you're tuning up your green and your people focused to connect and be collaborative. And under pressure, there is a risk you may become emotionally stretched and overdo the collaborative spirit. So you can see a sort of a dynamic here. If we flip a little bit further, there's some more text you can read later. And this is the same data, but expressed in terms of the colors here. So we can see underneath, your red is coming out on top, followed by your blue. But actually, there's such a big increase in your green, such a desire to collaborate, that comes out on top on a everyday basis. And when you're under pressure, I think it's your discipline that kicks in, that pushes the blue to the top.
Yeah, that's interesting. The nature of my work, I work with a lot of different people. So I think, and the word empowering is important to me, because that's what
So there's something about your role that's drawing that out of you?
Yeah, I think so.
Or even there's something that attracted you to the role in the first place?
Yeah, definitely. I think those things.
So what we're getting at here is that you're not one thing. You don't have one personality. You're a dynamic. There's shifts, there's moves, dependent on who you're with and what you're doing. This is the same data here, but expressed in the back-to-back format. So we can see your red and green on an everyday basis. You're stretching in both directions. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to drill into it in terms of underlying, everyday, overextended. So these are the scores just based on the questions that looked at what you enjoy, what you prefer, and what you like to do.
Okay.
So if I flick through this here, I mean, is there anything that strikes you looking at these bars? And I think we can see the collaborative and competitive is there. Actually, you're tough. You see, is there underneath? You do like to be clear. You do like to be to the point. You certainly, when in your most relaxed state, you are going to be responding in that way. But you'll balance that with a desire to want to keep the harmony and avoid conflict.
Yeah, there probably are situations, maybe more so outside of work, where I would
You'll
probably
express
be
that
tougher.
more.
Be interesting if, I don't know whether my colleagues would say I'm tough.
Well, we can cheat and jump ahead, because on an everyday basis, the answer is no. 3%. That's 2% beneath you, but you don't favour being blunt and to the point. That's not often how you behave,
not how I am.
even if you're having some of those thoughts. Here's another interesting one. Your adaptable is low, but your flexible is high.
Yeah.
Now, often they go together. The adaptable is that side of you which says, we don't need to focus too strongly on the goal. Let's just go with the flow right now and let things emerge. Actually, the opposite is true for you. I can see you like to be purposeful. You like to be clear on the goal. You want to stick to it and be determined. Yeah, that pushes your adaptable down. That makes your purposeful appear even stronger, because your adaptable is low. Yeah. However, flexible is high. That means if you're working on your goal and someone restricts you with a bit of bureaucracy you don't like or process, you're going to push back. You do like structure, particularly if you've created it yourself.
Yes, yeah, then I like it.
But you're not going to accept structure if you think it's not working. So there is a desire in you to be flexible and work around stuff that's not working in your eyes.
Yeah, and I'll probably change it if I don't think it's working.
And that will, although you are structured, that will just temper other people's perception of your structure, because they'll see that you're willing to work around stuff, or in extreme cases, break a rule or a guideline, as you might choose to see it. Yeah, so cautious. It is suggesting you've got a huge cautious streak underneath. Something in you wants to stick with the tried and tested and not risk it. Yeah,
there probably are underlying, if this is what I like.
This is your instinct, basically.
Instinct, is to be cautious.
Well, let's have a quick comparison, because if we jump here to your caution, it does go down a bit, although there is still, your colleagues will still see that cautious streak in you. I mean, if we look at the comparison here, one thing that strikes me is your demonstrative underlying, that's being enthused, animated, and so on, in your natural state is lower.
Yep.
As people experience you every day, you're dialing it up. So there's something about your environment, when you're behaving with other people, you want to show that more energized side.
Yeah, I think there probably are situations, we all have stresses on a day-to-day basis, and actually I try and elevate the group through.
Okay, so you're elevating the group, and I guess that combines with your desire to collaborate with the group, and so on as well. I'm looking for any other interesting patterns. Yeah, so you're sort of underlying pretty sociable, and you're still fairly sociable every day. It goes down a bit. The other notable one is your spontaneity. Underneath, it's suggesting you don't really like having to seize the moment. If you'd sooner be considered and reliable and write your lists.
Yep.
But there's something about you every day. You're still keeping your reliable high, but you are allowing or tuning up your spontaneity to seize the moment and do it now. Tell me about that.
That does seem to fit. I think there's individuals I work with, and as I say, my partner is also more spontaneous. So I think that does bring it out.
So maybe he brings it out of you, or gives you sort of permission.
Yeah, and also at work, I think there are occasions where we do have to be spontaneous and just go with it. And sometimes that doesn't feel comfortable for me, but actually it's the best thing all round.
So here, you're not that comfortable doing it, but at work it's the best thing, and you're dialing it up. Yeah.
Yeah. But
so you're sort of amplifying that behaviour. It's a tune up, if you like.
I may not initiate the spontaneity, but I'll go with it.
So could we call that more of a learnt behaviour? Is that something you've learnt to do?
Learning to be spontaneous.
Learning to be spontaneous. There you go. So if we have a look now at your overextended, these are the things that you do maybe when you're under pressure. These are also things you might do if someone says something and it triggers you.
Okay.
Now, you might be doing these and thinking, they're working well for me, I like them, but maybe someone who's quite different to you might see them as overextended behaviours. So I can see here, you do have a run of the green on overextended, so you might try so hard to keep the peace, you back off. You might try very hard to collaborate, maybe for too long, and all of your empathy may result in you becoming emotionally stretched. I don't know if you experience any of that.
Yeah, the emotionally stretched, I think, because I do take people into consideration, I think sometimes I end up bearing that a little bit. And probably accommodating to acquiescing.
Acquiescing means sort of you back off. You're just.
Yeah, there are occasions where I probably do, and I think there's times where actually I probably should be more tough, and I probably go the other way. That's an interesting one.
I mean, on the red side, the main thing you do, it says purposeful to goal fixated. So you are purposeful underlying and everyday, but under pressure, you may dial it up further and become really focused on the goal to the extent that it may drive you too hard.
Yeah, there have been occasions where I become like blinkered.
Put the blinkers on.
Got to get to the goal, and then I kind of forget why I'm doing it, what the goal was in the first place, and it just becomes, I guess, the reliable piece picks up. So reliable to hesitant, like that's an interesting one.
What that means here is you're so keen to have your list handled, and you're so keen underneath not to just do things randomly and spontaneously, that there is a risk under pressure that if I say, Laura, I've just got a few more things for you to do, can you do this and that? You're going to say, oh, hold on a minute, I need to check my schedule to see if I can
I'll probably
fit
say
it
yes
in.
to start with, and then I panic.
Okay, so fair enough. So the green part, the collaborative part, would want to say yes, and the disciplined part of you is wanting to say I'm full, and you might panic over it. So you've got different things going on, and whether you say yes or no might depend on who's asking and in what context. Yeah.
So this one where I like here it says I can be quite measured, but does this mean when I'm under pressure I'm not measured?
Not necessarily. What it means is you are measured every day to an extent, so you know when to be sort of serious and contained. Of course, you're pretty animated as well, so it's probably a behaviour that depends on the circumstance. It doesn't mean you lose your measured side under pressure. What it means is if you're under pressure and you're triggered, you're not going to become too serious and flat.
No.
You're more likely to crank it up and become demonstrative to overbearing is one of the possibilities. And of course, these things combine. You may become overbearing and fixated on the goal, at the same time. There'll be a sort of unique constellation for you. Yeah. So it doesn't mean you lose your measured, it just means you don't overdo it.
Okay, yeah, because it's interesting, overbearing. I don't know if I would I hope I wouldn't describe myself as overbearing, but I know there are, where it said takes charge to controlling, I try and do it in a people-focused way, but there probably are occasions where I could come across a little bit.
So maybe you are, maybe you're not. The key thing, though, is what do other people think? So in a team dynamic situation, you may not really consider you're overbearing. For you, you may just be getting people energized, getting it going. Come on, guys. But if someone is more contained, someone is more introverted, they may receive it from their perspective as overbearing. That's the thing to bear in mind.
That's useful, to think about. Because there are some occasions where I put that quote at the front, the stimulus
The Viktor
space.
Frankl. So in terms of being animated and demonstrative to overbearing, will be a stimulus, someone will say something, maybe something's running late or a customer's challenged, and your response, rather than being conscious, will be to jump straight into kick into action. And that's partly what this is about, is putting a pause in so you can notice what triggers you and be more conscious about it. Yeah?
That's very.
Could we pull up the Splash app? Because we can also explore this in the 3 personas. So if we have a look at it here, I'm going to have a look at your underlying first of all. So this is suggesting underlying, you can see the tension again between people focused, outcome focused, but underlying a little bit more outcome focused and a desire to be disciplined and sensible, and a bit of balance between introvert extrovert, maybe more for the extroversion. If we go now and I have a look at your everyday, you'll see it's going to morph.
Wow.
Now, actually, you are making an effort to be more collaborative and empathetic and so on. You're tuning that up, and you're just reining in some of your outcome focus. That's where your natural tough, you're just pulling it back a little bit underneath. And even holding back on some of your natural caution is just dialed down a bit to create quite a different feel. Yeah.
Spread from the inspiration driven.
The inspiration driven going up is quite an interesting one. That looks like this is where your spontaneity is coming when you find you're expressing it when you're with other people, or as you say, with your partner. Let's see what you do under pressure. If we now go and have a look at your overextended, it's morphing again. And this is the pattern we've just been looking at, really, which is you can become somewhat emotionally stretched under pressure because you're trying too hard to pull everybody together.
Yeah, there are occasions probably where.
And this is the bit of you that puts the blinkers on as you described it. And this is the bit of you that becomes sensible and says, hold on a minute, let's not change it, let's stick with what works. That's what we do with the down to earth here. Yeah.
So there's ones on every, like kind of all of the different, what do we call these?
So these are the 8 aspects around here. Okay. And actually in your case, you've got, in the overextended here, you've got the down to earth can be high, being putting the brakes on. Your people focus can be high, being quite overly concerned for others. With this sort of the orange here, you can, as you said, turn up the energy. Yeah. And down the bottom here in the purpley, the reddy blue, yeah, you can be completely focused on the goal, maybe too much. Yeah, or certainly for some people's taste. So you can explore this again afterwards if you click the buttons to see how that describes you when you're under pressure. Yeah.
Evidence to the contrary. Yeah.
We're going to use this in the team session as well. You're going to get to compare yourself with other people and overlay your splashes with others. So all that's coming as part of our valuing diversity session. So there you have it.
Cool. Thanks.
I'd just like to walk you through the other pages in the portrait, which are things you could have a read ahead of the session. We'll go through this in detail on the day. This is taking the previous 3 pages and putting them on one page. Okay. Yeah, and it's showing you the interesting patterns. So for example, here we can see your tough high underneath and then it's going down every day. So you could say that's a hidden treasure. You could probably afford to let a bit more of your tough out.
I'd be interested to know how to do that. Maybe that's something we'll cover in the team session, but it's interesting that it's there. Like I would have, now that we've talked about it, there are occasions where I can think, actually I can be quite tough, but actually maybe I don't always come across that way, and there are situations where I actually walk away and I think I needed to be a bit tougher there, but I don't, it's pulled by I don't want to upset people.
So maybe that'd be a great thing to discuss with the team and get their support for you to express more of that, because it probably would help the team if you could be more candid and to the point with the insights that you have. Yeah.
Okay.
We can see some things, you know, that you are dialing up actually. So here's your demonstrative being dialed up. So it's lower underneath, but you're tuning up. So we call that you know, an amplification, or you're making a conscious effort. And then of course your spontaneity, it's pretty low underneath, and that's a pretty dramatic increase to express it. So
is that what we look at? We look at the pattern rather
We're looking for the pattern. That's an amplification going up. Okay. If there's no clear pattern, it could just be, for example, that you are reliable underneath, reliable every day, reliable overextended. That means you like to be reliable, your behaviour is reliable, and under pressure you'll work even harder to be even more reliable.
Too much. Then I try and fit too much into the day because I want to get everything done. So when I'm under stress or pressure, I just add more things.
And that's what it might look like. And if you're doing that because you're trying to please people and get on, you know, that's the pattern that we could explore.
So the logicals are interesting. They're almost like the same.
Yeah, so you really like being reasoned, and you are reasoned and thoughtful. You will argue your case. Interestingly, you don't tend to get too argumentative under pressure. You're more likely to shift and become empathetic. If you're under pressure, you might dial back on being argumentative and show more concern for others. But when things are going well, you'll be using your logic, your reasoning, and so on.
And I'm not particularly into the evidence. I think that's probably quite true.
Yeah, so your down to earth is based on you being practical and sensible and having a cautious streak. When it comes to giving you the detail and saying, do we need a few more facts to make the decision, that's going to be less appealing to you.
I work with some people who I would say do these bits for me.
Okay, so other people who work with are fact orientated, and others have got the imagination.
And they're imaginative, so they come and they give me all of that, and then I kind of help to take it forward. I think as a triad.
Perfect. Well, if we have a look here, this is you. This is your psychological opposite. You may well be describing in some of those people in this second splash here who are higher on the big picture thinking because they're full of good ideas, possibilities, and they're more likely to go with the flow and so on.
It's interesting. If I did this with my partner, I'd say he's
well, you're very welcome to do that. That could be a great thing to do. Yeah. Yes, and collectively together, you're covering all the bases, and the same principle is true with teams. It's good to have a nice spread of people with different ways of being. Yeah? The worst thing a team can do is recruit to a type and have a consistent way of being, because then we get collective blind spots. So there's some text to describe that you can have a read of, like what it's like working with your opposite. We've also got some text. What if you meet another Laura? What if you meet someone with the same pattern of the colours and the 3 dots? What would that be like? I mean, you'll tend to be enthused. You'll tend to both be focused. You'll tend to want to please each other. But what might the risk be?
We'd probably struggle in the inspiring and thinking of ideas.
You might be missing a few good ideas, and this is some text to describe that. Now, when we have the team session, we're going to look at your communication preferences. So this is describing what you like others to do as well. It's also going to talk about what might irritate you in other people's communication. So you don't like rash decisions, it's saying here.
Yeah, I think I'd like things to be
thought through and so on. We'll explore this, and you might find that some people are the opposite, and some suggestions to improve your communication. And we'll be looking for you to make some commitments around that on the day. Yeah. We're also going to have a look at your pages on how you help support the creation of a high-performing team. What are your natural strengths in the team member? What was that one that you've just seen?
Your tendency to say yes to everything before consulting your colleagues means you may overstretch yourself and risk compromising your colleagues.
Okay, so from a team perspective, it's one thing to impact yourself and have a big list.
Yeah.
But colleagues might not like it if you're doing it on behalf of the team, and that's a possible overplay. You think you do that?
It was interesting. That was the one that, well, both of those actually jumped out at me. It's quite hard hitting, but it's
there's some more information here on what you can do about this. So blind spots, and then there's some recommendations to try and address some of these things.
Okay.
The final pages here, again, something you may wish to read ahead of it, is simply going through and looking at the colours. So what are your strengths in the red with your extroversion and outcome focus and so on? How might you use too much of it?
Okay.
So it says here, at times you can be too hard on people. Yeah. And that's sort of your drive coming through towards the goals. Yeah. You don't like that one?
No, it probably is true. You can be seen as bossy. I try not to be, but I am aware that I naturally
if
want
you're
to
overplaying
take the lead.
some of those qualities in the red, that's how it will come out. Yeah. Although at times you do
really
tend to
true.
underplay your red as well.
Yeah.
So we're not just one thing. It depends on what triggers us. So what was that one?
You have a tendency to work around an issue rather than address it head on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely, there's been occasions.
Well, we put the red page first because that's the highest. It does go through it in order.
Okay.
Followed by the blue, and then the green, and the yellow, which is your lowest. Yeah. But even though your yellow's lowest, you're never short of something to say in a conversation. So you're still energized and sociable, even if you don't have the big ideas and the seize the moment type stuff. Yeah. And there's some more ideas and recommendations. And it sort of finishes with a couple of quotes that might inspire you. This one's designed to speak to your strengths, and this one's likely to be less appealing, but probably good advice. Yeah.
Yeah. A man is not idle because he is absorbed in thought, and that's something I'm trying to become more aware of. Is actually thinking time is a really good thing.
Make space for your thinking time.
It's not procrastinating or being lazy. It's actually valuable.
So have you got any more questions for me ahead of the team session next week? This was intended to be simply an orientation of what's there to get you going a bit with the Splash app.
No,
so we can have
there's loads in there. I'm just going to take it away and have a read of it. But I'm excited for the team session to see what other people's are like as well. Well,
for sure we're going to do that. In fact, you're going to get other people's on your Splash app so you can compare other people, and then after the session you can talk to them and have a look at your strengths and see how they complement other people. So that's what we've got. That's what we've got in store.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Can I take this away?
You can. It's all for you. So thank you. Thank you for your time.